Alright, hello everybody. Welcome back to the second part in a multi-guide guide series for Roblox Black Powder. Today, in this second part, I'll be teaching you about some of the topics about skirmishing and long-range shooting. Mainly those two topics. We'll probably dive into some more complex stuff, but it's nothing that should be too hard. Okay, so we'll go over the first topic, which is how to skirmish, which is sounds complicated, but in itself is relatively simple. So I'll go ahead and teach you the first part. So this is actually a mistake I see many people do, which is they will essentially, whenever they're peeking, they will peek for a bit too long. They will see a person, they'll go out like this, and they'll be holding this for a good while. And I'll tell you the problem with that. The problem with holding a peak that long is that, let's say there's a whole bunch of enemies, okay? You're holding that peak, you're waiting for that person to maybe stop, you're waiting for that perfect shot. But let's say there's another person and they see you, and they immediately, they shoot you, okay? So that is probably one of the major reasons why you shouldn't hold out a peak too long, especially when you're skirmishing and especially when you see someone out in the open. So I'm going to teach you something very important on how to actually peek properly in this game. So one thing you have to keep in mind is that you always want to be in third person. I personally like to use camera toggle. That way, whenever I press right click, or I go into trail arms, I'm not locked to shift lock, so I can still control my character but still go third person. So whenever you see things like this, like you have moments like these where you see somebody out in the open. Let's say I'll spawn down dummy real quick. You want to immediately pick them out when you're in third person. And when you're in third person, you want to kind of like aim your cursor to where you know where they'll be, and then you want to click F, quickly get at your shot. Sometimes you may miss, but I mean, it's all part about peeking quickly. You always want to peek quickly, you never want to take too long or else you'd be shot. So that's one of the more basic ones about skirmishing. I can also give some like general tips. These are, pretty basic. Never reload out in the open. That's a death wish. Never reload whenever there's somebody charging at you, okay? And that's one especially important. I see a lot of people do this. Like, they'll shoot, they'll like miss, and then they'll start reloading, and then they have somebody charging at them in melee. That's also why I'd say it's so important. I cannot stress this enough. It is so important to stay in third person mode. Being in first person mode is just a detriment to your surroundings and your awareness. Okay, now we go over long distance shooting. So long distance shooting in this game really depends on RNG, I would say. The arc of the projectile in this game much acts like a real projectile would, in which it curves slightly up and then dips down heavy. And so in this game you do need to be aware of that, because there is a certain range where eventually it dips down heavy, and so that range is about, I would say, 0 to 200 studs, where it's still curving until it starts dropping. So at this range, it would be dropping at this point. And so that means you cannot aim like this, but you do have to aim a bit higher than this. So whenever you're at this far of a range, you ideally want to have your musket off. And what you want to do is you want to shift and then crouch and then kind of aim like maybe like that, and then see if you hit anything. So that would have been that was just above their head. That was just above their head. So now knowing that from this range, you can kind of aim up again, kind of do that, but aim you want a bit lower. That was still a bit high. So I think you get my point though. The farther out you are, the more you have to aim up. Very general. I would assume that that's, you know, that comes very just natural to you. Now, one thing that you do have to keep out for is that the RNG in this game can be kind of frustrating sometimes. So in the first part, which I hoped you watched before watching this one, you would know that hitting the arms or legs does different amounts of damage from hitting the head of the torso. So just like with melee, if you hit the arm or the leg from a pretty long range, you won't kill them. It'll only injure them slightly. So maybe I can show that. So you see right there. If you shoot their leg from even like that far, it is still only about, I would say, maybe a 30 health hits. Yeah, maybe a 30 health hit. And so, generally, whenever you're shooting from a range, something like that, you want to be shooting at their torso. And that's another tricky thing about shooting from long distance, is that since it's very RNG based, there are a lot of times where you will miss, and that I would say would probably be the majority of the time. When you miss with the musket, because again, it's very based on RNG, the spread, like the space whenever you aim, shift crouch, that space in the middle is all where the musket, where the bullet can go. So yeah. So that's about it for this video. I'll just do a quick recap. Remember, always stay behind cover if another enemy is peeking. Never peek whenever they're peeking, or else you most likely get shot in like a second. Whenever you're peeking, make sure you already have your target in your vision from third person. I like to use camera toggle, right click. You know, use third person, already have your aim out, and then quickly shoots. Do your best to quickly shoot. Never reload if the enemy is charging at you. That one's very important. Always keep an eye out on your surroundings. And then whenever you're shooting from distance, always try to keep your enemy directly in the middle of your crosshair, and always shift crouch and have your bayonet unlocked. Alright, that's it. Bye bye.